right now. I mean, I have great equipment that just doesn't work. And the simple things, simplicity always comes through. But anyways, I just am being obedient and going live, and I just want to talk about Christianity, my experience, where I'm at, and just be honest about some things. Because you just got to be honest. We could all learn from one another. It says that we are here to sharpen one another. But yeah, I want to talk about Christianity and just like the victorious mindset, right? Like there's so many ministers, people online who are always like, preaching prosperity, blessings, victory, overcoming, and that's like the main message, which is true because it's not just you as flesh and blood, like navigating through life. Like you do have favor, you do have the Lord who can, lift some of that weight for you, and that's why um that is a part of the story. But Christians do not talk about the suffering aspect or the pieces that you do have to go through. It's always about just like prosperity, blessings, and that's what you see from the outside looking in. And I feel like it can kind of be a snare or a trap. Even for myself, I'm like, Christianity, God's good, all of these different things, and then you get into it, and then there's like this flipped side that you have to walk through that's never really spoken about, never really talked about, for many different reasons. I don't know why. I feel like there is just a standard in Christianity of just lukewarmness. And a lot of people aren't in their in depth with God, so they're not really experiencing the breakdowns or the suffering. I feel like it's more of a rarity because there is a standard of lukewarmness, of being partial with God, and that's why people get partial results. And I'm not casting stones because when it comes to walking with Jesus, walking with Christ, there's fear. There's fear of surrendering. And it's not something you just jump into. It's not something that's comfortable. There's a lot of, it's completely, you're born again. You are a new creation. It's like foreign territory. You're learning to trust God. Um, and it's definitely something you take one step at a time in your comfort zone. Um, and that's how God wants you to operate when it comes to obedience. When it comes to the call, like people are like, what is my calling? This, that, and the third. You are in your calling right now. It may not seem like anything is happening, but you have to understand we all have limitations. We have capacities in the spirit of like what we can do, what we can't do, and God knows how far He can stretch us, how deep we can go, and when enough is enough, and we just don't have limitations, and He understands that. And I feel like as time goes on, He kind of like stretches you a little more and more. He builds your faith through experiences. Um, and you just trust him through experiences, which makes you be able to tackle or take on more things because it's comfortable for you. And then and then in the future you're doing like something that is just so far from what you would be doing. But that is how God is, right? He's not gonna throw you into deep waters, throw you off a cliff, or bring you into a place that is beyond your capacity, beyond your spiritual limitation, that just completely destroys you and crushes you. And then you're just done. You're just like damaged goods. And He's like, oh, well, I had fun with you. Like, um, the breakdowns are for a purpose. And the reason being, let's be honest, is because, um, it makes you more Christ-like, right? When you go through trials, tribulations, um, painful things, it's not to just hurt you. It's not to just damage you. It's so you have humility, so you have love, so your pride is not as crazy. It's to give you a meek, humble spirit, right? The lower you go with Christ, the higher you go with Christ, which is, we have a lot of things that we battle with, and that's okay, right? We all have things that we battle with. And the closer you get to Christ, it feels like there's more things, but it's important that we just be honest with ourselves. And, the deeper on my walk, I'm just more honest. Like, there is things that, I struggle with. And it's because there's just so many new things. There's just so much stuff that I've never been through. And it's like all I can really think of doing is just complaining or pointing the finger or just, sometimes I have so much pride, and pride is like, defense. You're like defense, like you're learning to trust God, and it is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to surrender because it's just uncomfortable to surrender. You could read in the scriptures, God has plans to prosper me, not to harm me, all of these things. But still surrendering is scary, right? And it's not something you can just completely walk into, right? The Lord will stretch you how he will stretch you, and then he will back off, and he will lift that extra weight for you. Because, like, when it comes to obedience, when it comes to your call, we think we just have to be beyond ourselves or walk extremely far into it or just go full tilt into it. Um, but the Lord wants you to have like permanent spiritual changes. Like, it's not just about you. Like, where you are right now, he wants you to be able to maintain that. Like, permanent spiritual changes in the place you are at. When you're obedient, when you're taking these little baby steps to where the Lord wants you to go, he's also doing spiritual changes. So when you're there, it's not like very uncomfortable or deep waters or it's foreign or you can't steward it or whatever it may be. Um, but yeah, there's just a lot of things going on in that process. Like for me, when I would give sermons, it would be like stern, strict truth, like very like this is what the Bible says. If you're not doing it, then okay. And I would kind of pick things up from other people, and it had good intentions. And I just wanted to speak the truth. I love saying the truth because I wanted to be obedient to God, and that's where I was spiritually in my maturity. But there was no grace there. And, I had to learn grace with truth because, you could say the truth in the wrong time. You could say the truth to somebody and it could be in the wrong moment. And, for me, I felt like I was just a lover of the truth, but had barely any care for people. And I still do struggle with that. I mean, I do care for people, but it's like, I kind of care for the truth a little more to where I'm not really thinking about how they feel, or I'm not really, caring to some degree just because I've been through so many different experiences. But like, this season, I've kind of, yeah, like the Lord had me go through a season of learning grace, because I was so, um, heavy leaning on just strict truth, and I had like no care for people really. I just had care for the Lord and what he wanted me to do, and I had to learn grace. Um and it was kind of dark because I kind of fell in love with sadness, or just fell in love with being broken. Like, it kind of doesn't even make sense, but like, you know how the Lord really made me learn grace was, you know, having a heart for the lost. I'm like, okay, like with Christianity, this is the reason I skipped over Christianity when I was growing up and it had no appeal and it didn't speak to me at all because it was so neat. It was so packed, or it was so neat. It was so clean looking. And I'm just like, well, this is me. I got this baggage and I can't bring it in through that door. I see my sister and her husband, and I had like just my life was just completely the opposite. And I would go to these camps and I'm like, that's just not me. Like, this is too neat. And that's how a lot of people feel about Christianity. They want to come in, but they're like, they see a church, that's just too neat. That's just too clean. That's just too, when I got all this baggage and I can't bring it through the door. So the Lord really gave me a heart. I'm like, how do I reach these people? And then I went down this rabbit hole. It's like, I got to be with these people. And I kind of fell in love with just being broken. And I went, the Lord took me to some lows, which is good because a lot for me, for example, if I'm always in the church, if I'm just consumed in the church, I find myself becoming like quite judgmental between evil and good, to where I can't relate to like people who are so far gone because I'm just kind of like religious, right? I'm so like, when you're in the church, it's just truth, it's just facts, but there's no grace. And that's where I was. And I'm like, so the Lord had me, cross over through the four walls of the church outside to go into the messy, to go into the ugly, to go into the bad. And the only really way to have like a care for broken people is to have like that heart posture of being broken yourself, right? Because that brokenness makes it gives you humility, it gives you love, it makes you compassionate, it makes you caring. So when the Lord breaks you, like automatically you have a heart for the brokenhearted and you want to be around them and you don't like judge them, you just have a heart for them. So that is definitely a route that the Lord will take with people, if you want to go that far. Because when you're in a church, yeah, like I said, it's just truth, 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 but no grace. um And yeah, I just went into like some very raw places, truthful places, because I want to be like a flexible Christian. Like my testimony, like when I was younger, like I was doing absolutely everything under the sun. And I don't like when I'm in the church and I'm like perfect image, clean, or like that rusty testimony, that, relatable thing that can help other people. Like, how do you actually go and reach the brokenhearted? You got to be in it with them, or you got to, you got like, I don't know, like, yeah, the church sometimes is just, it just makes you, yeah. Mm. But yeah, that's definitely like something that happens in the spirit, is like that's not talked about in Christianity, is like the breaking down, um, is the suffering that comes with it. Like Paul was saying that he was like partaking in Christ's suffering, and it says that, after you suffer a little while in these things, and it's not to destroy you, it's to build humility, it's to build compassion, it's to be more understanding of people who are there, you know, because the Lord wants you to be helpful, to have a heart for the needy, to have a heart for those people that society looks over. That's who Jesus came to, is the people that society overlooked. And like, what I'm saying is, if you're constantly in this clean, perfect environment, you kind of begin to overlook them as well. Because you're like, how do I even relate to that? And it's not because you're good, it's just because the Lord has healed your spirit. The Lord has delivered you from your demons, right? It's not like Christians aren't just good people. There's actual spiritual things that are taking place. Like, if you look at my channel, like, I've did everything under the like, my channel. It's kind of ironic. Like, I have the proof. My first videos, I was using the name of Christianity to get views, and I was making fun of it, and I was swearing and doing all of these things, and I thought it was a joke. I just, like, Jesus was just a swear word used with like other swear words after that. Like, when I was younger, my sister would try to take me to Christian camps, and I didn't even see God in it at all. I just, it was a positive, good feeling, and I would go to churches and stuff, but it was just boring. Like, personally, I had no relation to it, and I guess, and that's the thing, because that's the thing. You just feel different. Like, when I seen Christianity when I was young, I just felt different. I'm like, this is neat, this is that, and I got all this baggage, and like, I can't squeeze it in the door, like, and I didn't see God in it, right? I'm just like, these people are good, but really it was God, like, working on their spirits, building them in the spirit. But I'm like, I'm just way too different. Like, nah, I'm gone. And it's just because there's a lack of truth, there's a lack of honesty, there's just there's just not much for, like, people, atheists, or people who are into cocaine, or people who are into drugs, or people who are, so far off into the deep end. There's nothing for them to cling on to. There's nothing for them to relate to. There's really no testimonies that can speak into their life. There's nothing, anything that they can grab onto, or be like, oh, like, I can be delivered from this, or hey, like, that can actually, this can actually fix me, or whatever it may be. Um, and that's why, like, personally for me, I like to go to the church, maybe give a sermon, but I like to come out, because I like that raw testimony. I don't want to be churchified. I want to keep it raw, rusty, and just be honest, and not, like, hide all my baggage and everything I've ever been through, because that's what begins to happen, is that, like, oh, this doesn't look good. This doesn't make the church look good, or this doesn't make anything look good. And that's what happens when you get too far deep into a church. It's like, oh, don't share this, or don't share this side of yourself, or don't, tell your testimony like this. Um, it's just not a good look. It doesn't make us look good. But it doesn't help people who are far off in the deep end, who are, struggling with different things. Because the reason I came to God is, I was struggling with a lot of different things, right? And I broke down, and I'm like, okay, I just prayed. I don't even know if I just prayed to God, not necessarily Jesus. I just prayed to God, because I had literally nothing left. Like, I was homeless in Vancouver, just because I was like, I had this, I felt like I was being called to do something, and I was just working 6 days a week and only had Sundays off. And man, like, my spirit was screaming of, like, there's something else, there's something else. And I'm like, just stuck doing just work, 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 work. And like, there was just so much double mindedness, and I felt like I was going insane. and my mind will be thinking one thing, people will be saying another thing, and it's like I feel like I'm going insane. I gotta chase something, so my phone might die. But we're just gonna go with this. But yeah, so I went to Vancouver, and there was just a lot of things that took place that were very low. And getting very low made me humble. It broke my pride to where, I actually started to pray to God, anything, because that's all I had. And it's been just a slow, gradual process. And that's what it is for all of us. And that's what it's going to be for all of us. It's just a slow, gradual process. We could look at others and be like, wow, like they are so far ahead. But we are exactly where we need to be. I am exactly where I need to be. We're all exactly where we need to be. It's all in God's timing. And even in my life, I'm like, wow, like I just wasted like 25 years of my life, God. Like, where were you then? Or like, why didn't I come to you sooner? But all of that, looking back, is all a testimony. It's all experience. And it all plays a part either in the future, now, or whatever it may be. So you can speak into whoever's life, or you can minister to whomever. Like God said that he would restore the years that the locusts and the cankerworms have eaten. So all that wasted time, which we all have, is restored, redeemed. But you have to understand, like, we have limitations. Yes, we want more, but can we truly